All right, we'll get started, everyone. Firstly, thank you for registering and attending this webinar this evening. My name is Matt Shimell. I'm part of the Basketball Victoria Digital Support Team, and I'll obviously be running this session along with my colleague Kevin, who's also from the Digital Support Team. No doubt many of you have met and dealt with Kev before. So the purpose of this session or this webinar is to run you through association competition management and fixturing and give you a real overview of the key tasks that you'll need to perform as association administrators. We have designed this session for, I guess, as a refresher for those of you who have administered competitions in PlayHQ before the coronavirus came along and disrupted the season. And we've also got a number of new people who haven't used the platform before, so we've designed this webinar to hopefully cater for both groups of people. Just a few housekeeping things before we get underway. Like the other webinars that we've conducted in the last week or so, rules around questions. So at the bottom of Zoom, you'll see there's a chat function there. So we ask that you type in your questions. And we've got Ben White as well from the digital support team who will be on hand to answer those questions. We'll also have some dedicated time throughout the webinar to do some Q&As with Kev. So some of those questions may be raised during that time as well. This webinar, like the other ones, will go for about an hour and we are recording it. So we will send you a link to a replay of this webinar later on. So you can rewatch it if you wish. Thanks, Kev. So just to quickly go through the agenda for this evening. Firstly, Kev will do a bit of a recap of the other association webinar that we did yesterday around the setup for registration at the association level, because obviously a lot of the things that we'll talk about tonight tie in with that. Then he'll focus on fixturing and team allocations, score sheets and manually entering in results, the regrading process, what you can do with ladders, such as adjusting ladders. We've got how to set up finals, the reporting side of things. We've got a number of reports available in PlayHQ and we'll show you the key ones around competition management. And then at the end, he'll give a quick demo of e-scoring or electronic scoring and how that works and integrates with other parts of the platform. And then show you playhq.com, which is the public facing site where all the results, fixtures, ladders are housed. So that's it for me. From now, you'll hear me throughout the Q&A parts of this webinar, but I'll hand over to Kev to commence the demo. So over to you, Kev.
Thanks for that, Matt. Yeah, hi everyone. I hope everyone's going all right. Now, as Matt touched on, this webinar assumes, I guess, prerequisite knowledge from yesterday's webinar. So if you did miss that, we'll also send out the link to that webinar as well, so you can catch up on that, the information that was presented then. So in yesterday's webinar that Ben and Dave ran, they ran through the reasons for the individual registration projects, such as a better user experience, the need to grow the sport, legal obligations around data, and a change in fee structure. Now, as they touched on, the PlayHQ development approach is to, we are building this system from the ground up. So we've got some really good foundations in place. We're going to continue to build out additional modules to a basic level before looping back to further enhance and provide additional functionality within each of those modules. They went through configuring your associations database. We talked about competitions, seasons, and grades. And then they ran through the registration supplements of merchandise, custom fields, and discounts before going through the various registration forms. And then finally, they talked about how to allocate players and teams through to the competition. Now, what I want to do now is I'll just jump across to this window here. So as touched on, yep. So we're just picking up from where we left off. So where we left off yesterday, registrations have closed and teams have been entered via club portals, or via like independent teams have entered via a registration form, or you've manually created those teams yourself if you are a smaller association where you allocate players to teams. So this is where we're going to pick up from where we left off yesterday. Now, I'm using the association here called Kev UAT Association. The competition is called Webinar Competition, and we're in the spring 2020 season. So one thing that Ben and Dave might have touched on yesterday is visibility of seasons. So my personal preference is that when I'm setting up for a season, before I do fixturing, I want to hide the competition season. So you can do that in the season settings and turn off the visibility. The reason for that is because in PlayHQ, there's no publish to web. So anything that you do is immediate. So you don't have to click and then wait for a response from the web portal. Everything you do is immediate. So I like to hide my season at the start. When I'm doing my fixturing, I can leave all my grades visible. Once I finish my fixturing, then I can just merely make the season visible, and then everything's available to be seen on the public-facing fixtures website. So, as I said before, we're at the stage now where teams have all been entered. And one of the first things as a competition administrator you'd probably do is review those team entries. So we're going to be working with the Thursday under 12 boys teams, A and B today, in today's session. So you see here, we've got all these teams that have been entered. These ones are all independently entered teams, and that's a club entered team, which is why you've got the prefix there. Now, as you're probably all aware, typically a lot of clubs and team managers like to enter their teams into B grade, but not into A grade. So we need to do a bit of initial grading here to say, look, now I've got a bit of a Chicago Bulls theme at the moment. As I'm sure a lot of you have been watching The Last Dance over the last few weeks. And so I've got this 97 Chicago Bulls team that's entered in B grade, but as we all know, they won 72 games the previous season, so there's no way I'm going to let them enter into B grade. So I'm going to unallocate them from here, and I'm going to shift them up to A grade. So now I am happy with the lineup of teams in A grade and B grade, so we can now commence fixturing. So in PlayHQ, there's a two-step process to fixturing. The first step is to generate the fixture, which puts together your game dates, and the system has a inbuilt algorithm that will, I guess, produce the fixture pattern of who plays who. And then second to that, we can then allocate games to courts and times. So I'm going to generate the fixture for A grade. Now, in the setup of a season, you stipulate the season start date and the season end date. Now, the start date encompasses all of the season from round one of any grade, and then all the finals as well. So your very first game in any grade and the very last game in any grade in finals. Whereas over here, what we're doing is we are stipulating the start date for this particular grade, Thursday under 12 boys A. So for this particular grade, I'm going to start this season last week. So today's date's the 21st. I'm going to start this on the 14th of May, and it'll make sense to you later in this webinar why I'm doing this. I can select the number of rounds that we've got going here. And now at this point in time, you can choose to set up your finals or to not set up your finals, and you can set them up later. I will set up my finals at the moment, and I'll show you how to do that. So we've got two choices here. We can either select a standard finals format, which we've preloaded into the system all the common formats that you'd expect. So your very common top four, where you've got the 2-week knockout or the 3-week double chance system, all the way up to 8 teams where we've got like a knockout, a bit like the NBA conference system, and also the, or within each conference, and also like the AFL double chance system. We've also got top 8 where you've got the top 4 and the next 4, a bit like an A-B kind of format as well, both with knockouts and double chance systems within it. So that's option 1, which is a standard format. And as you can see, because we've only got 5 teams in this grade, it's only going to show you formats that work with 5 teams or fewer in the finals. We're not going to present to you the 8 teams for a 5-team grade. Alternatively, you can select a custom finals format. So if you do something that's very specific or intricate, if you like, for your association, you can choose to set up a custom finals format. Now, the way this works is you select the number of rounds, and then you need to manually add games to those rounds. Now, at this point in time, as I touched on PlayHQ, we're building it from the ground up. So you will need to manually add games for every round. However, progression rules don't currently exist, but they are going to be released, developed and released in time to come. In addition to that, if you do want to select a standard format, you can also add additional matches to that to suit without progression rules, and you'll just need to manually progress them for now. So in this particular case, I'm going to select a 4-team double chance over 3 rounds finals format. Now down the bottom here, you've got here your exception dates. Now the season exception dates were shown yesterday in the session there, where you could set it up at a competition season level, and this now flows down. So I can choose to either accept and use that season exception date for this grade, or I can switch it off, but I'm going to leave it on for now. In addition to that, I can also add specific exception dates that apply to this grade in addition to the season exception date. But for now, I'm just going to roll with that season exception date of the school holidays there. Now I just hit this review button up here, and I can check the season, I guess, timetable or schedule. I normally like to check that round 1 is correct. I like to check that it skips over the dates that I want it skipped over. I always check the last round of the regular season and the grand final date to make sure that it is exactly as I want. So I'm going to hit generate, and I've done the first part of fixturing for A grade. Now I'm going to do the same for B grade. So I'm going to generate the fixture. Again, I'm going to select last week. It was 10 rounds, same finals format, and I'm going to roll with the same exception dates there. So I'm going to hit review fixture, do a quick check, happy with that, and I'm going to generate fixture. Now, PlayHQ is going to be building bulk fixturing functionality, but as at this point, fixtures need to be generated on a grade-to-grade basis. But it also presents a good opportunity for you to check the settings and check what's been generated. So once the fixtures have been generated for these 2 grades, we can go in there and view that fixture. And as you can see, it's done all the dates and the fixture pattern for you. It's also got these tags here that show you whether a game is pending or upcoming. So pending means it's in the past, but hasn't had a result put in. Final will say that the results has gone in for that match, and upcoming as per the tag, the games in the future. So in terms of allocating like games to courts and times, the first way I'm going to show you is my least preferred way, but I need to show you this because it is also how you change the details of a particular game. So I'm just going to click on this little menu item here and go edit game details. So in here, I can change the teams involved in a game if I like. I can also change other details like the date, and I can assign a court and a time. Over here in game alias, if you want to give a game a particular name, for example, if you had a naming rights sponsor for a game or a game, multiple games in a round, you could give it a name. But we've also found that this is particularly handy for doing a scoring roster. So if you want to publish on your fixtures on your website who's responsible for scoring which parents or families are responsible for scoring, or even teams, you can pop that in there and hit update, and that will get displayed on the website. So it shows it there, but it'll also show you on the website, which I will demonstrate later in the session. Now, as mentioned, that's my least preferred way of allocating courts and times to games, because I've got to do it one by one. What I'm going to show you now in the season window is how to do allocation of games in a more bulk manner. So if you click onto allocations here at the top, there are two types of allocations. There are game allocations where you can specify the court and time for each game in a season, or you can go to game slots where you can say, for every grade, I want game number one or slot number one to be at this court at that time every week of the season, and so on. So I'm going to start with in here, because typically most associations will start here. So if you remember, I'm dealing in A and B grade Thursday night. So I'm going to go into view the slots for Thursday night. Now you can see here, I'm using the Boroondara Sports Complex, which was pre-configured as shown in the last webinar, where you can, I guess, select the venues that you want to use for a particular competition season. So the game slots down the bottom that need allocating are here. So it's just a case of dragging and dropping it onto the, I guess, the ground schedule up here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag this under 12 boys slot 1 to 8 o'clock on court 1 and slot 2 just after it. If you make a mistake like that, the system will say, hang on, you've got a bit of a clash here with a bit of an overlap, just fix that up, and then it's happy. I'm going to drag the B grade games onto court 2 just like that. So what this will do is every game of the season in this grade in the first time slot, or the game slot, will always be at this court at this time, and same with this one here, that court at that time. Now what this will do is this will do this from tomorrow onwards. So it won't change anything for today. It's always applying it from tomorrow onwards, because the logic is, you won't be making these changes, during the day, because teams expect that, already know that they're playing at a certain court at this time. So any changes you make in slots will apply from tomorrow onwards. Now, also another thing to note is that if you do have any changes that you've made manually, which I'll show you in a second, if you do come back in the game slots and reallocate these slots, it will snap all those games back into line with these slots. So just keep that in mind. So I'm going to hit update. And what it's going to do, it's showing the games as green, which means that it's happy and it's saved. So now we can move on. So if I come back into games, as mentioned before, I can allocate and check the allocations and change the allocations of every game of the season on a particular date. And I can also do this back in the grades fixture. So as I touched on before, these changes happen from tomorrow onwards. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to assign tonight's games manually. So I'm going to put them to the same times. Ordinarily, this wouldn't be a problem because you're doing this well in advance of the season starting. And save changes. So I've done tonight's games as well. Now, what's commonly, I guess, used at association level is the manual change of games. So if I view this one for next week, you'll see that all these games have been allocated as per my game slots. But what you might find is that one particular team has put in a request and they like late games. So say the Spurs like late games. So I might move them to the late time slot and swap them around. You might find that you've got referee, I guess, preferences to help with your running of your games, where you need referees that play in teams also need a referee. So you might change these to balance it. Or you might know on a given date that a particular court is unavailable. So you might move those games to another court. Now, as I touched on before, that's all well and good, and that's fine. However, just know that if you ever go back in the game slots and you make any changes to the slot allocations, it will snap everything that any changes that you've made manually in future back into line with those slots. So that's I guess the allocation of games to a court and time. So the next thing I want to show you is the visibility for your grades. So typically, a lot of associations will generate their fixtures for their grading period, but because they've got a grading period where there's potentially a few rounds and then you're going to do a bit of regrading, we don't want to publish fixtures that are in the future after the grading period, because they're inevitably going to change, and we don't want people to save those times or write those times down in their calendar where they're inevitably going to change. So we can go into the fixture, go into settings, and in the general tab here, you've got grade visibility, which is self-explanatory. We've also got this thing here where you can show what rounds to display for this particular grade. So in this situation, I'm going to play one round of grading. So I'm just going to show round 1 to round 1 before flicking it back to all rounds after I've done my regrading. Now, in addition to this, as Ben and Dave might have touched on yesterday, you've got the ability to hide a ladder. And over here, you've got the ability to hide scores for team scores, results, and also for player scores. And typically, this can be done by associations for younger age groups, where we're trying to encourage participation rather than winning and losing. So if you like, you can hide the scores here. I'm not going to in this case. And if you want, in the ladder settings, you can also choose to hide and show a grades ladder. So I'm going to go back into grades and do the same for my B grade competition, or my B grade. Okay, and if you recall at the start, I hid my entire season because I didn't want the fixtures visible on the website until I'd made all my changes and done all my fixturing. So I'm going to go back into the season settings and make my season visible so it can be seen on the public-facing fixtures and ladders website. Now, before I go on, at this point, I'm just going to check in with Matt to see if there's any questions that people have asked about what I've covered so far.
Yeah, thanks, Kev. Yeah, there are a couple of questions that I'll ask you. Firstly, from Pam, can you unallocate teams from grade in bulk?
Unallocate teams from grades in bulk. So what you're asking, Pam, is in grades. This is pre-fixturing, I guess you're asking. At this point in time, no. It's just the process of manually clicking on each of the teams. But that's something that we can build out. And one of the great things about the approach we've taken is we're getting this system tailor-made, so we can definitely take on board that feedback and look to get that built sometime in the future.
Cool. And just one other question, can grades be combined?
Grades be combined. So we've got two things going on here, where I'm assuming the question is, you've got teams that have nominated to A grade and you've got teams that have nominated to B grade. Prior to fixturing, you can obviously unallocate all the teams from one grade and pop them in the other grade to combine it that way. However, there is the possibility to combine grades at the point of regrading. So if you played, for example, you played your rounds of grading, you found that potentially Division 8 and Division 9 are very similar and you want to combine them, or alternatively, you might find at the top end, you've got a really strong A grade and a top end of A grade. And for example, the two lower ranked teams in A grade don't really want to be there, but you can't really force anyone up from B grade. You can combine A and B grade, which is very common and one of our recommended practices, if you like. If you've got a few really strong teams in A grade, you can definitely combine A and B grade to dilute the butt whippings, if you like, and I guess bring up those standard of the teams in B grade without, I guess making two teams suffer in A grade where they probably don't belong. I hope that answers the question, but I will be showing you regrading in a second.
Cool. All right, that's it for now, Kev. So I'll let you continue on.
Okay, thanks, Matt. Okay, so what we've got is we have generated our fixtures. We have done our allocations, including manual allocations, and we've unhit our season and we're ready to play basketball. So I will go through electronic scoring later on in the webinar, but for now I will show you guys how to print score sheets and I guess handle manual entry of results. But for those that are using electronic scoring, you probably won't need this unless there's potential technology issues with devices on game day. So all of that is in the game day section. So on the left here, I'm going to click on game day. And what I'm going to do is, we started our season last week. So I can see there, over here are the games for last week, A grade and B grade. So the first thing I'm going to show you is how to print score sheets. So I'm just going to tick that box there and generate score sheets. System will have a think, put together the score sheet to be printed. And as Ben and Dave mentioned yesterday, you've got a choice of two score sheets, two score sheet models if you like. You can choose the old domestic score sheet model, which I'm going to show you here, which is, I don't know if you can see that, I'll blow that up a bit, where it does pre-populate the information. So you've got the player information, the coach information. This is where you put the 2, 2, 3 box for a free throw, etc. We've also added in this possession arrow that might help. But that's printing of score sheets for this model. And alternatively, you've got the new FIBA score sheet as well. So you can choose that back in the grade settings. So that's printing of score sheets. So the score sheets are printed, they head down to the stadium, the games are played, and you get a pile of score sheets back that you need to enter the results for. So in order to enter results, you just simply pop in the results here. There you go. And you can just hit save changes. So that's the quick way to enter results for a day. Now you've also got the ability to drill down into a game. So I'm going to look at this one, for example. Now, by default, all games, once a result has gone in, we lock the game so that you can't accidentally muck up the results of it, I guess. So we're just going to unlock that game. Now, down here, I want to show you how to tag players into the game. Now, as mentioned, electronic scoring is going to take care of all this for you, but if you are using score sheets and you are inclined to add players to the games, you can tag him into there. You can also input scores for players and a whole lot of detail if you want to go into there. And any players that are tagged into a game get a game played for finals eligibility purposes. Now, on the top right here, you've got override result. So in the previous window and also in here, if you're just manually entering in scores, it is a win, loss, draw scenario where the system automatically calculates. However, if you do have forfeits and things like that, you can go in there and put in the forfeit results. So in this case, I want to say team B forfeited. I'm going to put in my for and against based on my competition bylaws, my association bylaws. We didn't have a default because some use 20-0, some use 10-0, some use another method. So that's how you do a forfeit. In addition to that, we've also got double forfeit and we've introduced disqualifications. So previously in the previous system, you had to put in, like, for example, if a team broke a bylaw or played an illegal player, you had to put in the result as a forfeit so that they didn't get competition points for that loss, if you like, loss on forfeit. But we found it a bit misleading because the game was actually played. So we've introduced this disqualified tag, which again gives the team that did something wrong 0 competition points, and the team that did nothing wrong, they get the 3 competition points along with the for and against. So that's the override results there. So I'm just going to save changes there. So that's pretty much the results engine. And what I want to show you now is regrading. So back here in my competition and season, we can do regrading. So in my particular case, I've got one round of grading and then I'm going to do regrading. So I'm going to hit Regrade Teams. Now in PlayHQ, it filters grades by, it groups them together by day, age, and gender. Because ordinarily, you wouldn't be regrading a team that has registered to play on Thursday to a Wednesday competition. And likewise, you're probably unlikely to regrade a boys team into a women's competition, for example, or a boys team into a men's competition. So we've grouped them by this. However, there is a way to override that, particularly in the case that you want to push a team up an age group because they're dominating their natural age group. So I'm going to select the under 12, Thursday under 12 boys group, if you like, and hit start. So this is the regrading, I guess, window or module. So what we've got here is we've got the ladder for your convenience to help you make regrading decisions, to make it easier. And in order to move a team, you simply need to just hit the move team button and you've got a choice. You can either do a one-for-one swap with a team in another grade, or you can just move them down a grade. So in this case, I'm just going to move them down a grade. I might want to move this Warriors team up a grade and do a one-for-one swap with this team. And then I might move this team up a grade. Actually, what I want to do is I want to keep that team in there. So I might swap them with that one and I might move this team up. Okay, so as I said, you can either move a team up or down, or you could swap a team, one-for-one swap. If you want to move a team outside of this group there, or this group there, you just move a team into this unallocated team section. And likewise, if you want to import a team from another group that you've unallocated, or you want to import a new team who perhaps registers late, you can also do it using the import thing up the top. So I'm going to hit Save Changes because I'm done with my regrading. And it's also important to note that you want to do your regrading all in one hit, and I'll explain why on the next screen. So over here, you've got the Regrade Round. So it's saying the regrading will take effect from round 2. So the Regrade Round basically relies on every game in that grade being in the future. And I believe also not having a result attributed to it before it regrades in that round. Otherwise, it will delay or postpone that regrading to take effect in the next round. So I'm going to hit regrade. So in terms of the fixture pattern, this is what's going to happen. If the number of teams before grading and after grading is the same. So in this case, they are the same because we had 5 before and we've now got 5 after in each of these grades. What will happen is the teams coming in to the grade will take the spot of the teams departing the grade. So the fixture pattern is intact and it will continue on from where it left off. However, if the number of teams change, so for example, if this went from 5 to 4 and this went from 5 to 6, a brand new fixture pattern will be established. So it will not continue on. So you might find that in round 1 or 2 of grading that, you know, this team played that team and both teams are still in that grade. You might find that they play again the next week or soon after because a brand new fixture pattern has been established. Now, down the track, we will be building in some sort of, I guess, logic and checks and balances, but at this point in time, a new fixture pattern will be established. Now, in addition to that, in terms of allocations, if the number of games remains the same in a grade, so for example, this grade had 5 teams, it still has 5 teams, and even if it reduced to 4 teams, there would still be 2 games in this grade. Your existing allocations that you had will be retained. However, if the number of games in a grade reduces, it will retain the first number of X number of slots or game allocations, but the last game slot and allocation will be deleted. And conversely, if the number of games increases, what will happen is you will need to allocate those additional slots that have been created by regrading. So hopefully that all makes sense, but I'll take questions in a second. So once we've done our regrading and once we've fixed up all our allocations if necessary, we need to now go into these grades and unhide the rounds, because now we are ready to show the entire season for each of these grades. So I've done that for A grade, and now I'm going to do that for B grade. Now, another thing we want to do is we want to check our ladder settings. So over here in settings, ladder settings, as opposed to ladder, over there, we want to look at results down here. I want to talk a bit about this. So by default, ladders will take into consideration results attained by teams in all grades that they've been in. So I guess most associations either go into one or the other camp. Either you carry forward your results from grading, or you want to wipe your results from grading. Now, in my particular case, I only had one round of grading. So if I wanted to carry forward my results from grading, I would just leave that at round one, which means that it will calculate my ladders from round one, irrespective of what grade those results were attained in by that team. However, if I want to wipe those results from grading, I'm going to say, I'm going to calculate my ladder from round two, because that's when my regular season is starting, and it will disregard any round one results that the team has attained, whether it was in the same grade or not in the same grade. Now, in addition to that, the only include results from this grade setting can be turned on or off, which means, for example, if I had my ladders calculate from the start of the season, meaning I carry forward my results from grading, I can switch this thing on, which also means that it will any result attained from any other grade. So if I've been moved from B grade into A grade, those results won't count. However, if I remained in A grade or B grade, whichever my grading grade was in, whichever grade I was in for grading, those those results will count. So I'm going to leave that off and have it calculate from round one. Now, I might throw back to Matt to see if there were any questions. Hopefully, I was able to explain that and articulate that in a way that was easily understandable.
Yeah, just one question around ladders, Kev. Can ladders be configured head-to-head?
Yeah, so head-to-head ladders are going to be built. However, right at this point in time, that is not available. We are very close to completing the tournaments module, and as a part of that, there is the ability to manually adjust, I guess, decimal points to push a team up by head-to-head. But at this point in time, head-to-head's not available, but it will be available. It is on the roadmap.
Cool. Yeah, that's it for now, Kev. So
okay, fantastic. Okay, the next thing I want to show you is, and I guess I better do that for. Actually, no, I don't need to do that because I was happy with the settings for my ladders. So in the ladder here as well, I want to point out a few things. Ladder adjustments can be done in here, and at the moment you can adjust the total, I guess, the competition points of a team. We will build out the ability to adjust win, loss, draw, etc. columns, but right now we've just built the total ladder points, and we're moving on to other functionality. Now, in addition to this, a lot of country associations have squad teams or their rep teams because they can't play in the VJBL for geographic reasons. They have their rep teams, if you like, for each age group play up in the next age group. However, those teams typically are not eligible to play finals. So what we wanted to do, what we did was we built in this, I guess, a check before teams progress through to finals. So once all results are in for the regular season, this button will become active and you can push teams through to finals. However, for those country associations or any other associations who might want to change the ladder around and make adjustments, they can do so before teams automatically flow through to finals. So then you'd make your changes in ladder adjustments, and then you'd assign your finals teams. The last thing I wanted to talk about, no, actually on ladder adjustments, our, I guess, recommendation is that this be used very sparingly. Typically, if teams break a bylaw in game, like say they play an illegal player, you'd probably want to penalise that team in the game result by disqualifying them, where they get 0 competition points and 0 points for. Ladder adjustments it's probably something that there are applications for it, but it's something that we recommend you penalise in game if possible. Now, the other thing I want to talk about in ladders is this points average. So typically and traditionally, if you like, ladders are sorted by total competition points. So whoever has more competition points ends up higher on the ladder. Pretty self-explanatory. However, we've introduced this thing called points average. The problem with total ladder points is predominantly bias, where if you have more bias, you're disadvantaged by total ladder points because you've got fewer games to attain points for the ladder. So associations have gone, all right, let's give a win equivalent for bias. However, teams then get into finals on the back of extra bias, so it's unfair. So we've introduced this thing called points average, where it takes your total, you still get the 3 points, 2 points, 1 point for win, loss, and draw, win, draw, and loss, if you like. But instead of sorting by total ladder points, you take your total ladder points and divide it by the number of games you actually played. So it equalizes that and eliminates that buy factor. So you're judged on the games you actually play. In addition to that, there are practical applications, such as if teams enter the competition late, in the past, they'd have no chance of making finals, whereas you could do that. It also helps you for, if you are doing things like regrading, but you only want to count results of games that were attained in that grade, and also for cancelled and abandoned matches, it really comes into its own. So points average is Basketball Victoria's recommended ladder model. Now, the last thing I want to talk about in the back end is reporting. So over here, I'll just quickly explain what each of these reports do. The venue report will give you every game that's played on a particular date at a particular venue. The advanced fixture report is something that I would use a lot because it gives you all the details and including results of past matches of every game in a particular competition season. Games played report for finals eligibility. Team entries or team report is particularly handy at the start of a season when you want to, I guess, put together a list of your contacts for each of your teams, particularly those independent teams. Participation report will give you every bit of information you could possibly want or that has been captured in the system for every participant in a particular competition season. And fill-in participation report will list all the players that have been added on game day in electronic scoring, which I'll show you in a second. Over here in financial report, the transaction report will give you a list of every registration and how much money came to your association from that transaction. And the payout report will show you, I guess, the amount that's been deposited into your bank account and the date details of that, because in PlayHQ, I guess the deposits are done in batch every 48 hours, and this is like a payout report that outlines all of them. The orders report, I think Ben touched on yesterday, will tell you all the merchandise that has been ordered. So Matt, before I move on to electronic scoring, were there any questions about that last section or anything before that?
No, nothing. So yeah, continue on.
Okay, great. Next thing I want to show you is electronic scoring. So the way we've approached this with PlayHQ is we've decided not to build an app for a couple of reasons. One, apps only work for a particular operating system, so you got to build multiple apps. In addition to that, there are issues around the delay of publishing. So say for Apple and iOS, when you release an update for an application, there's a period of time where they vet what's been built before they release it, and by that time it's potentially out of date. And also just for, I guess, ease of development and to assist associations, we didn't want to restrict the electronic scoring platform to only certain operating systems. So this thing has been designed in a website, and it can work on pretty much any of the common platforms such as laptop, PC, iPad, Android tablet. So it works through a web browser. So anything that runs that's somewhat modern in terms of hardware and also browser, it will work. But you can check the minimum requirements on the PlayHQ support page. So the way it works is, and I might jump back in here and just quickly show you the admin rights to this. So if I go into my association and admin rights, any full access administrator can log in to your association and download its games to a device. In addition to that, you can also create an electronic scoring administrator for your stadium supervisors, for example, because you don't want them to have full access to the back end of your database, but you might want to give them electronic scoring access to download games from your association to their particular stadium. So I'm in the test environment here, but ordinarily you would go to score.playhq.com on your scoring device. I'll also mention that this electronic scoring, despite it going through a web browser, the geniuses at PlayHQ have managed to build it in a way where you can download games when connected to the internet, score the games in an offline situation where there's no internet at the stadium, and then come back into internet connectivity and upload the game results to the back end. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to log in to using my association login. As I said, either a full access administrator or an electronic scoring admin can log in to download games. I'm going to select the venue. So for example, I'm going to select Boroondara Sports Complex for this device that I'm going to score on. You can download up to 7 days worth of games. And I'm also going to set a PIN that will be used by referees to sign off games. So once you put in all that information, the stadium, how many days in advance you want to download games for, and the PIN, I can start the session. Now the electronic scoring app or the website is going to look for games at this stadium for those parameters that I put in before. Now from here, I can select which court at this venue I want to score on. So you can click on court 2 or court 3 or whatever. I'm going to run court 1. So once I've selected the date, I can also change between dates if I've downloaded future dates. I'm going to score today, court 1. I'm going to hit the lock button. So what that does is that prevents anyone such as scorers without the PIN to change to another court and muck around with which games are going to be scored on this device. So from there, you click on the game you want to score, and you can add players to the game. So these are the players that are registered to this team and have been allocated this team. So I'm just going to tag them all into the game. And hit done. Now over here, you can also, the coaching staff are also automatically, the head coach is also automatically added into the game there. Now for this team, I don't have any players preloaded, but I'm going to show you how to add a fill-in. So I can add a fill-in over here. So they can put in their own information, put in their singlet number, and they have to agree to the Basketball Australia and Basketball Victoria terms and conditions, which if you click on here, it links off to our terms and conditions, mainly around the capture of their data and what it's being used for. So they self-report that information, they add the fill-in, and you can then, they're added to the lineup. Now, in regard to fill-in, one of the common questions we get around the BV fee, particularly for those in Metro Melbourne who were transitioning across from team-based fees to individual registration, but also for country associations who have been extremely disciplined over the past few years by ensuring that all players are registered before they take the court. Basketball Victoria's fill-in policy is for 2 games. So we allow a player that's unregistered at Basketball Victoria level, so they don't have a Basketball Victoria participation license, we allow them to play 2 games per calendar year across the state. We will be building in functionality that prevents them, in due course, we will be building functionality that prevents them from being added for a 3rd game. But you are allowed to play 2 games as a fill-in without being registered with Basketball Victoria affiliation. So once you've added once all the players have been added into the game, you can start the game. So the clock's ticking down, and very similar to the current platforms that we're using at the moment for electronic scoring. You just click on the player and hit the number of points. You can also do it the other way by hitting points and then selecting a player. So we've got the 3-pointer, 2-pointer, free throw. You can also allocate points to the teams for things like uniform infringements or late starts. So if, we might give them a 5-point head start, for example. And fouls, you click on the player, click on foul, or vice versa. So you can also give other types of fouls here. Technical foul, disqualifying foul, unsportsmanlike foul. So, sorry, Dennis, I'm going to pick on you, but I'm going to give you a unsportsmanlike foul and also a technical foul. And because he has, got his 2nd technical or unsportsmanlike foul, he's been game disqualified here. So he can no longer partake in the game. Timeouts are attributed just by hitting the plus here. When you start a 2nd half, or what happens is the team fouls will reset, timeouts will reset. You've got your team foul count here, total points obviously up there, timeout counts here. Mid-game, you can also add a player. So if this team had a late starter, you can come in and add them to the game or add them as a fill-in. You've also got the undo button. You've got an event log where you can go in there and check what's going on and delete anything that that you need that's been entered incorrectly. And I think that's all I want to show you in game. At the end of the game, what I might do is I might just show you this before I take any questions on this. You can end the period, end the game, and when you end the game, you need to put in the PIN number. So any scorer can't just come in there and end the game. You need the PIN code that's typically provided to the referees in order to sign off a game. So I might just check the score, submit that, put in my PIN number, hit confirm, and that game has been completed. The results, now that tick has appeared, the results have been sent to the back end, which I'll show you in a sec, and then I can move on to the next game. I might just open up for any questions. Matt, were there any questions about electronic scoring?
No questions for electronic scoring. There was a few others, but yeah, the responses are in the chat there.
Okay, cool.
No, if you want to continue on, or
okay, beautiful. So I might just quickly jump back into the game day here for today. If I just refresh this, there you go. You can see the result that I electronically scored has come in as 5-all draw. And if I click into the details, I can also see that the player points and, poor Dennis's technical foul and unsportsmanlike foul has come across. Now, the next thing I want to show you is the front end. Now, as we touched on yesterday, Ben and Dave talked about the PlayHQ website, playhq.com, where you typically need to, or players can go to playhq.com and find the association or club that they want to participate or check details of. What I recommend that you do on behalf of your members is you do this yourself. Go and find your association, copy the URL for the fixtures and ladders tab, and pop that on your website or your social media pages. In addition to that, you can also click onto your register tab, particularly for the associations typically in the country where players will register direct to the association. You might want to also jump into your registration tab there, copy that URL, and also put that on your website and social media pages. That way, players don't need to find their association through playhq.com. They can go straight to your website. In addition to that, you can also, like players and parents can also bookmark this page to their home screen of their phone. We haven't gone for an app because for the reasons I mentioned before, but they can bookmark the association or club page to their home screen on their phone, and they just click it and it works pretty much just like an app. Now, one thing I want to mention in their profile, which I think Ben covered yesterday, but in the profile, we will be building out like a family or account holder fixtures. So you could see the games for all your kids, but that's still to come. So in the front end, you've got the season, and then you can select the grade. Now, if this season was hidden, obviously I wouldn't be able to click through to here, but I'm just going to click on a grade. And you could see that the result from the electronically scored game has come straight over here. And you can toggle that on for additional information. And that's where the whole, I guess, no publish to web, where results come up instantaneously, it really comes into its own. Now, in terms of a round, what this thing will do is it'll naturally jump to the next round if it's within 5 days of the next round, or it will stick to the previous or current round if it's within 48 hours of a game or round happening. Now, over here, we've got the ladder, and there's the points average, and you can also toggle on for additional details. The last thing I want to show you is just touch on briefly the support site, which is support.playhq.com. In here is a whole lot of information with articles to tell you how to do a particular thing, and we're also adding videos at the moment. So over the next few weeks, you'll see some videos pop in there as well for each support article. And if you ever need a hand with anything, you can start a conversation here to submit a support request, which comes through to Basketball Victoria's digital support team. So Matt, were there any questions?
No, there was one more, but I'll get Ben to chat that in the chat group.
Okay, if no more questions, thanks for attending tonight. I hope you guys found that beneficial. Please don't hesitate to contact us if you need via the support site. And yeah, stay safe, guys. And I'll just hand back to Matt.
Great, thanks, Kev. Good job. And yeah, just a reminder that this webinar has been recorded, and we will provide this to you later on, so you can rewatch it or review any instructions or information that Kev has provided you tonight. Yeah, so that's it for this evening. So thank you for taking time out of your Thursday night to join us on this webinar. Hopefully you found it helpful and knowledgeable, and yeah, I guess we wish you all the best for the resumption of basketball, which fingers crossed is not too far away. So thanks again and have a good night.